Chief Management Officer. So that's the first question. Here we are at this great technology conference with quite an impressive list of speakers, and right now you're asking, well, why is a marketing guy on stage? That's a fair question. So one of the skills, or maybe I should say professed skills, that a marketing professional is supposed to have is the ability to look at things from a different viewpoint, a different perspective, if you will. And in the technology industry in particular, companies have a tendency to look at the market and the world very much from an inside-out point of view. So what we make and what we produce, that's how world order works. And my role as Chief Marketing Officer is to take a slightly different perspective on the situation and look at it from a customer-in standpoint. And it's amazing that perspective can really change what you see. So for example, in the picture behind me, some of you right now may be viewing that from the perspective of kind of left to right, and from that you can see the face of an elderly woman. While others right next to you may view it from the perspective more right to left and actually see the back of a young girl. Same image, two perspectives, two very different outcomes. So what I'd like to talk about for the next 15 minutes is to challenge our perspective on IT. Now, I've been in this industry, in the technology industry, for just under 3 decades. And what I've seen over the 3 decades is that, for the most part, we have carried the same perspective on IT forward. And that perspective is kind of represented on screen here as we are trying to take IT services that are in a controlled, maintained, centralized data center and deliver those to a specified endpoint, often the desktop. And if you think through the different eras or evolutions of IT that we've had, that perspective has maintained. It started with the mainframe era. Large iron sitting in a cool data center, hardwired out to green screen terminals, all completely controlled. When we went to client server, yes, we distributed some of the processing power, but fundamentally the perspective was the same. Servers in the data center, and now we're going out to client PCs on the desktop. The web era brought us some new and interesting technology, some hope, specifically designed to kind of break free of the firewall. And we've leveraged that in many ways. Yet what I find interesting is that overall, if you look at how people use the web inside their business, inside their agency, we reskin traditional applications with an HTML front end so we can deliver it to the same desktop PC. Same perspective. How do we get information and data from point A to point B in a controlled loop? Well, I would argue that as we enter this next phase of IT, we have to change our perspective. This next phase, cloud computing, is about multi-point service delivery to multi-point service consumption. It's a very different world that we need to enable. IT services will no longer come from a single data center or a single origin. The fastest growing software in business today, being adopted by business, is software as a service, which already indicates that it's coming from a third-party service. The fastest growing category of software is mobile applications, coming from all over the place. So already on the delivery side, we're talking about multiple sources of information and services that have to be delivered out to the users. On the user side, I think we all understand what's happening there. Users no longer use that one IT device that's been blessed and put on the desk in front of them. I'm sure if I ask the audience, how many of you use more than one device to access information that's related to your work, to your job? the vast majority of you would put your hand up. What I find interesting, though, is that, and I won't do it for this crowd because this is a government-oriented crowd. Don't want anybody to have to raise their hand on the second question. But what I find interesting is in a general crowd, if I ask now, of all those people that have their hands up, which is usually 95+% of the audience, how many of those people, how many of you have devices that have been blessed by your IT department, that your IT department knows about, that they have given you permission to access work? Roughly 10% of the hands will stay up in any audience. So we know that on the user side, it's already changed to a world of multi-point consumption of IT services. So it's time to change our perspective. So what I want to do is I want to walk through 4 key categories and the impact that it needs to have on our perspective. The first being devices. The second, the changing landscape of applications. Third is the changing work style that is occurring amidst us. And then fourth is the actual workforce itself. So starting with devices. One of the interesting things to see is how long does it take a device to achieve critical mass? So the benchmark that I put in place is I say that once we're shipping 100 million units per year, we've reached critical mass. So as a starting point, let's use the PC as a benchmark. Now, I know that there were some different flavors of PCs before the Apple II. I like to use the Apple II as kind of a standard benchmark because at least it was more mass-produced, more consumable, and frankly, it was the first computer I ever touched back when I was in college, which was a great thing because I was programming on punch cards before that. So I use that as my benchmark. How long did it take before we started shipping 100 million PCs per year? It took us 21 years to achieve that point. Fast forward to smartphones. First smartphone introduced in 1996 by Nokia. And of course, when we introduced the smartphone, those of you who have been around in this industry will probably remember we launched the perpetual year of mobile. Every year, well, this is the year of mobile. Well, this is the year of mobile. This is the year of mobile. When did the year of mobile happen? I know it happened because we all have them, but when did it happen? So Apple introduced the iPhone in June of 2007. In that same year, there were 12.2 million BlackBerry units sold. It took Apple less than 2 years to surpass BlackBerry shipments. So that year of mobile was probably somewhere in that 2007, 2008 kind of window, in case you're wondering. Now you know the answer for that trivia question. It took us 15 years to get to 100 million units per year in the smartphone industry. But here's what's fascinating. The momentum is so strong that it is predicted or forecasted that Apple alone will ship 100 million iPhone units next year. Even more interesting is let's look at the modern tablet. Now again, I'm not counting the previous generation of tablets that failed miserably when we tried to take a PC and put it into a tablet format. Wrong perspective. I'm talking about the modern generation that was introduced by Apple with the iPad and now has multiple flavors available. We expect, based on current run rate, that we will reach 100 million units within 4 years. The iPad is the fastest adopted technology ever, now eclipsing the DVD player. So the pace of change in the device world is considerable and it's accelerating. And that's only going to lead to more and more usage patterns from different and multiple devices. Let's talk about applications. I want to compare and contrast the application on the left the classic bane of any business user's existence, the enterprise application, to the applications on the right, the ones that we love and look forward to on our mobile devices. The enterprise application, it made sense. Role-based, workflow-oriented, everything you need to do right there in front of you. So we threw as many tabs as we could into the application, as many fields into the screen as we could, as many drop-down boxes, no descriptive text whatsoever, and just confused the heck out of everybody that used it. That industry represents approximately $15 billion a year in maintenance and support fees. In the US alone, we spend $18 billion a year on IT training, a big percentage of that on applications. Let's contrast that to the applications on the right. There are approximately 700,000 mobile applications now available across platforms. This year alone, people will download 17.7 billion mobile applications. Now, I must confess, I have not used all 700,000 applications out there. I've only used a few dozen. But what I find interesting is that this concept of micro apps, these applications that are very narrowly focused on a very specific task in a very intuitive environment. Of all the applications I've downloaded, the amount of money that I've had to pay for support, zero. The amount of money that I've had to pay for training, zero. Folks, with a combination of mobile and HTML5, there is absolutely a new world order coming to applications. This is going to change the way we work. So let's talk about work style. The PC era was based on automating what we thought of as the classic desktop in the 1970s. I had to produce documents, I'd put them in file folders, I had my Rolodex next to me, and that's how I worked at my desk. And so the PC era was about automating that 1970s desktop to improve my personal productivity. Let's fast forward to today. Today, we live in a collaboration-oriented world. The Facebook generation. Many of you probably have teenagers. You ever tried to communicate with your teenager on email? Do they respond? Something that, for my generation, I thought, wow, we've really advanced. This is so great to be able to communicate so easily and freely is now considered an archaic tool. The Facebook generation, 175 million users log in every single 24-hour period to Facebook. 65 million of those from mobile devices. They share over 30 billion pieces of content every month. Folks, we are designed to work this way, collaboratively, taking small pieces of information and being able to use that to gain knowledge and to contribute back knowledge back into the pool in real time. Just think about your average dinner party, 8 people around a table, all talking, having a great time, sharing information. It's very collaborative, it's very soundbite, it's short, quick, to the point. It's not structured the way we think about communication in what is soon becoming the old world of email. This is the work style that we're moving towards. And if we're not moving there fast enough, let me tell you, there is a generation of workers that is right on our heels that will demand this new working environment. Let's take a quick look at a time lapse that goes from 1950 to 2030 by 5-year increments. This is the distribution of population, and as one would expect, you're going to see a wave moving from left to right. The red bar and over representing retirement age. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we are at the largest percentage ever of a workforce over the age of 55, approximately 18 to 19%, and growing over the next 5 years. Yet, at that same time, 50% of the workforce is under the age of 35. Guys like me are kind of feeling squeezed. Our perspective has to change because that workforce coming in has that different perspective. The old dichotomy of what I experience in the consumer world around technology, ease of use, productivity, self-service, and what I experience in the traditional business environment, controlled, security, slow, that dichotomy has to come together. We have to find a way to achieve the best of both worlds and put us on a new trajectory. And we can if we simply change our perspective. Think about IT from a different viewpoint. We can't use all the past approaches and technologies from yesterday to solve the changing needs of today, or we will shortchange the potential of tomorrow. At VMware, we refer to this new state as IT as a service, which is simply changing the perspective from years of how do we produce IT to looking at it from how best can we consume IT and optimizing IT for that consumption. This will lead to an environment of easy-to-use and consume applications built around a collaborative work style available on any device, anytime, anywhere. Because after all, work isn't where you go, work is where you are. This environment will increase employee engagement and knowledge sharing and contribute to not personal productivity, but organizational productivity. That's the benefit of changing perspective. Thank you.